Hey guys, David Vose here. Well, it's a nice day. It's beautiful. The snow's gone, but I don't see a lot of sunshine yet. Not sure because I didn't really look at the weather forecast, but right now it's kind of cloudy. Friends, I've got a few things I want to talk to you about. And I think the most important part of what I'm about to say is that you cannot trust all the hype. None of it. They're doing it. The bad guys. I don't think I'm going to go into every one of these things we're going to be talking about, that we could be talking about, like flat earth and we never went to the moon. John F. Kennedy or 9/11 or all these things. Now, there are some huge things that are real. You can find them out for yourself. The scientific database is full of the proof that we did not go to the moon. We can absolutely know the earth is not flat if you believe in scientific data. Now, I'm not talking about modern propaganda, stuff they cannot prove. They can tell you that's a beautiful nebula and it's red and got green streaks through it and it's digitally enhanced. There is no color out there in space. Those are lights and they will make a white light. Some of them can be slightly on the red shift or some on the blue shift, depending on how far they're going away from us or coming towards us. But it's a very slight derivative. It's not going to be blue. It's not going to be red. There are no nebulas that are bursting with colors and flower-looking designs. Now, when you look up at the stars from Earth, there are lots of pictures online that'll show the Milky Way and all these beautiful colors. Have you ever seen that? Well, that's because you're in the city, Dave. No matter where you are, the Milky Way is not colorful like that. Unless, of course, you're looking at the Aurora Borealis, which can be green and blue and pinks and stuff. That's another phenomenon. So when they put out pictures and show you these galaxies and all these colors, it's just a lie. It's digital pictures. It's not just enhanced. Some of them are enhanced, but a lot of them are just made up. And when they say they can discover a planet on a star or a star system millions of light years away, they're lying. Especially if they say they can determine that there's water on that planet or something. These are lies. Now, they've been telling us that they can do this. Now, the reason we know they're lies is we can't prove it. There isn't any scientific proof that you and I can see. Have you ever noticed whenever you read anything that has to do with doctor stuff or medicine, that it's written in such a lingo that you can't comprehend it? They'll use double negatives. You must not do it, because if you don't not do it, it won't happen. You're like, huh? They use a type of Hegelian diatribe on everything that there is. They don't want you to know anything about medicine. So now I'm not going to cover all these other little things. I mean, we're not going to get into any further than what we have. Just, okay, there's a lot of things like the Mandela effect people are talking about. Now, why is it important that we don't get off on these hypes? Number one, most of the stuff's impossible. Only the Lord can change your memory. In fact, you are the Lord, and you're the Lord of this manner. Your mind is supreme. They cannot touch you. You're an immortal. What you remember can only be altered by mesmerism, which is done by religion, torture, repression, abuse. Lots of stuff can repress memories, but they cannot take them from you. Even if they were to put a JAB in your arm and change your genetics, that's a lie. They don't have the ability to change genetics. That would be like saying they have the ability to change the elemental chart so that there is no such thing as gold anymore. They've just disappeared it. They've taken it out of the elemental chart. You can't take it out. There's a continuum. There's a flow. You remove one mineral from your body, and you will be dead instantly because there will not be a flow of energy. You will die. That's what the silver cord is. It's made out of silver. You cut that cord, and you don't have any more contact with that physical reality. But you understand you can't cut it with an actual physical knife. It isn't physical. You can cut the cord with consciousness by your choice. You say, well, people die. It's not their choice. No, when people die, it's their choice. I have watched many people die. I mean, I've seen people that have died. You know, I was talking to them, and then, a week or two later, they died. Two of which were closer to me as human beings than any other human beings on the face of the earth, except for my daughter. And I knew them, and I was very close. And I watched them prepare for death and accept it. One of which, and I'm not going to name any names because I got family out there and people are just not understanding one another. And I'm sure somebody would have a different opinion, But I was there, very close with these people. And I spoke to them philosophically, and I understood what they were thinking, what they were doing. And I've heard this is true with everybody. Nobody dies unless they're willing. Well, what about people who die in an accident, in a car accident? Well, you make subconscious agreements. You don't know it. If you're just so depressed, which means you're taking a deep rest, and when you want to take a deep rest, it means that you've worked and exerted yourself too much, and now you need to give it up. We're not going to build on this house any longer. We're not going to till that field no more today. I've got to go and forget everything I've been doing here and take a deep rest, a depressed. Depression says it's you yourself making the decision, I'm not going to go do those things. Now, other people may make you feel guilty and say, well, you're bad because you're lazy, or you just sit around moping. You don't help anybody. You're not talking and you're not positive. Well, that's the point. The positive is gone from you. You have built this house as high as you're going to build it. You're tired. Maybe other people could build it higher. Maybe they're older, stronger, more experienced at this. But an old soul might press forward to 100 and say, well, this is good old average age. I'm probably dying. They'll just say that to themselves. Over the last few weeks or months of their life, or even years of their life, as this progresses, they start thinking, well, like at first they're young and they're like, they never even think of death. Never pops into their mind. And then middle age, you start thinking, man, what would happen if I died? I'm kind of scared of that. I don't want to die. I love my life. Well, they hold on to it with lust. And you can do that. But a lot of negative things begin to happen. If you could learn to relax, let it be, like John Lennon said, you could live forever. If you had no fears, no worries, and you believed in yourself, and you knew, well, belief, forget that word. If you knew who you were, you would never die. But because you don't know and you're scared of the monster, you wrestle with that monster as long as you feel you can. And the thing is, the reason why you get tired is the monster gets stronger because other people have seen this monster and they're scaring you, and you're living in a bubble, a consciousness with your partners and the people around you that all have decided to believe in this monster. And of course, the monster usually takes you out between the years of 60 and 90. And very few have ever lived to be 100, Dave. That monster's coming to get you, and you begin to believe in this monster. And he'll take you out however you've decided or planned in your little cosmos that you've created. Maybe an accident on the freeway, or you just get arthritis and get gradually older and older until the pain gets so bad, and you just believe you can't change anything. There is no, it's got to be some chemical thing that I'm not doing, or some diet. Friends, your diet is an extension of your spiritual being. If you are very positive and high and giddy, you'll be on the music, you won't eat much, you'll be a different person. If you're lazy and lethargic, you'll eat too much, you'll drink too much, you won't have the gumption, because you see, maybe you're a young soul, and this looks like a big job for you. And you're saying, yeah, I don't think so. I built me a little place, a little lean-to. I've got some rest here. Maybe you're wiser than the rest, and you don't want to build that house. And you realize that the end's coming, and you're like, you know what? I'm going to slide out of this and go into heaven and watch this thing from above. I don't know. But everybody makes their own decisions. And you say, well, nobody's ever made the decision to live forever, darn Dave. Well, no, not anybody you know. Because number one, if anybody ever had, you would never even know. They would have spent their last 40 years off in a cave thinking, enjoying nature. They wouldn't have cared about the cities. You'd never met them. And number two, they probably wouldn't even exist. There might be 1 in a million in the last thousands of years. Because if you go to a field and wait for it to harvest, you'll find they all harvest about the same time. And you're not going to get a grain of wheat to harvest the first week you plant it, or 2 weeks or 3 months into it. It takes whatever time it takes. Like, I don't know what it might be, 3 months. Whatever time it takes from the wheat to start pushing up from the soil till harvest. And I don't know how many months that is, but that's about what all of them have. There's an average, and then some of them might got a little dwarfed, because they didn't get enough soil or sunshine. But they still kind of go through the cycles at these certain stages. There's rhythms, circadian rhythms, and life rhythms, and the sun goes around, and the moon goes around, and we go around the galaxy, and that goes around the universe. And so you don't attain nirvana by sitting in a yogi position in the corner going, beat your head against the wall. Nirvana is a ancient word that means 1 trillion years. And it has to do with these Kali Yugas, and these Yugas are 360. We find this in the Sumerian tablets. Sitchin made it famous, and he said they had some kind of a thing called the Sar, and it was 3,600 years, and Nibiru would come around He didn't know what he was talking about. Or he was purposely deceiving. I'm sure he wanted to do both at the same time, because he's one of these Bavarians, and they all don't know what they're doing. They're deceived out of their mind. You know what the biggest cult in the world today? The worst, most hateful, egotistical, wicked cult. Cults are bad of any shape, flavor, or size. Jehovah's Witnesses are one of the worst. They may very well be the unfaithful steward, the wicked slave. But their mommy is Jerusalem. This Jerusalem that is now, that corresponds with Hagar and is in bondage with her children. And that Jerusalem is about to be destroyed. She is the mother of the harlots. It's not Babylon. First of all, Babel is the house of El. Babylon is a place of confusion, because Yahweh scattered their language. And that became Judaism. And you can read it in the Talmud. Is the religion of Yahweh, who destroyed Babel. And therefore, Babylon swallowed up Judaism, and they went into captivity. And they've been in captivity to Babylon for a long time. Babylon is not Babel. Babel was a good thing. They were trying to get to El. It's like Adam and Eve were trying to become like the divine being. Jesus offered us gnosis to be like the divine being and the tree of life. It was an initiation. We had to be initiated through the lie. And the liar was the one who said, I forbid you to have the tree of life. I forbid you to become like deity. Jesus said, we are like the deities. We are deity, and the scripture cannot be broken. So we were supposed to have this tower, libraries, knowledge to become like the divine being. But Yahweh cursed us and threw us out of the garden, and swore in his wrath we'll not enter into his rest. And it was Yahweh who destroyed the tower to become like El and made Babylon, or confusion. And so out of the 72 nations, Yahweh took the Judeans and they destroyed the others, and they're the ones who destroyed the unity to make the confusion. And the unity was by means of the vengeance and their deity. And so we have the parable of the Judeans being taken into captivity to Babylon. And so Babylon, the mother of the harlots, is not saying that the harlot's name is Babylon. It's saying the harlot, Jerusalem, Babylon, Babylon the Great. What about Babylon the Great? Well, it is now run by the Judeans. And they came out of there with this literal Hammurabi text of Moses that is a veil, the apostles say. And that religion, Judaism, especially the Talmudic Judean religion and the Kabbalism, is their upside down and backwards deep things of Satan. And yes, Satan, though he is darkness, is transforming himself. Some translations will say masquerading, like he's not really an angel of light, but he's masquerading as one. No, that's not what the text tells you. The text there in Thessalonians is that Satan changes. He is darkness, but he changes. He transforms into an angel of light. Do you know that that idea right there is actually in, you probably heard about the 13 emerald tablets written by Thoth. Some say Hermes Trismegistus. Well, they're the same person. The Greeks call him Hermes. Hermes is a very ancient deity who was married to Aphrodite, and this is where we get the hermaphrodites. And Aphrodite was also called Ethiopia, as we said the other day, but Ethiopia is Opie. And in Greek writings, we have Opus, who was married to Zeus. They don't say that Opie or Op or Opia is related to Ethiopia. I think it's probably related to Ethiopia because ops is supposed to be the word for plenty or full. But if you think about the word plenty or full, that's a word that has to do with space. Now, Ethiopia is to do with beauty. And her mother Cassiopeia is the cosmo, which has to do with the system or the arrangement. And a woman is arranged beautifully. Her daughter was Ethiopia. So the arranged creation, which people like Jehovah's Witnesses will say, oh, that just means the system of things. But not getting you the deeper fulfillment that it's a beautiful system. It's an arrangement, adornment. It isn't just a system. It's a beautiful, arranged, orderly system. So you can't have a new world order if you're talking about the order, because the order is what it is. You don't make it new. It does what it does in a perfect symmetry. And so you might say symmetry. The universal symmetry is the cosmos. The cosmos' daughter, Ethiopia, is the most beautiful of her children that ends up marrying Zeus. Well, she gives birth to the spiritual child or human. So Ethiopia was married to Zeus, and they have the spiritual child, the Christ. But Cephas was married to Cassiopeia, the physical arranged adornment, the physical order. And they have a child named Andromedas, which is andro, which is human, the physical part, the carnal. So there's two fathers and two mothers. There are two deities. As this channel has always said, the two deities, one of them is our Heavenly Father, and the other one is the Father of this world, Yahweh, the God of this world, as the Bible says. The higher Father never changes. He's light. He dwells in unapproachable light. He is the reality. The lower Father is transformed. The physical is transformed. But our Bible's full of this information. The New Testament, it talks about all these deities, Zoe and the Word, which I don't even know why we translate Jesus being the Word. That's really not the greatest translation. Maybe it was the voice. And if you translate the voice, well, it's reminiscent of these 13 emerald tablets that use this, I am the voice, this kind of thing. Actually, in the 12th tablet and the 13th tablet, actually mostly the last two, but all the way through, there are allusions. But just go look at the last two, the 12th and the 13th, I should say. And you will find that Jesus quoted from that book. When Jesus said there will be father against son and mother against daughter, he quoted the emerald tablets. And we know that he was quoting the tablet because there's another place, not right there, but another place, a few verses or lines later, that say kingdom against kingdom will arise. And Jesus quoted that in Matthew 24. Well, I'm not saying Jesus is a plagiarist. I'm saying Jesus was Thoth, and he was reminding you of all the Holy Scriptures. Remember, the early disciples were Gnostic. They were of the mystery schools. They had learned all the wisdom. They had read the Timaeus. They had read the Egyptian teachings. They had studied in the mystery schools. They knew perfectly well who all of these individuals were. They knew that Ops was actually Artemis, that Artemis was the hunter, married to the same deity that you see all the time here in America. People talk about in passing every day. We talk about Mother Nature. So she was earthly. She was the earth. But there is a greater Virgin Mother, which is the whole universe. But you might say, well, wait a minute. Why are we quoting from the emerald tablets? I'll give you 3 good reasons, maybe more as I go along, and my mind will remind me of some better ones even. But right off the top of my head, 1, Jesus quoted from it. 2, people in the 1st century, in the 2nd century, quoted from it. Clement of Alexandria quoted from it. Probably because he was from Alexandria, and that's where they taught these emerald tablets. It was the Bible, the emerald tablets was the Bible of the mystery schools. All the people that were in these secret mystery schools read it. You had to go to the Library of Alexandria and had to have permission to read that book. So we didn't have that book for a long, long time. However, others did. And here's the 3rd reason. Newton, the smartest man who ever lived, probably. I don't know. I'm not going to say he is the smartest, but he was a very intelligent man. Because we have Newtonian physics that we use today to calculate everything we do. This is where we can even measure gravity with Newtonian physics. But he invented calculus, and he interpreted the Bible in the book of Daniel and said that the end of the Gentile times would end in 2060, and that's when the end of the world would be. Well, he's only going to be off about 30 years. And there's a reason why he was off, but he had the correct analysis and understood very well. In fact, most Christians to this day, as Wilder would say, still goes by Newton to interpret the Bible. All these Bible professors and scholars that you see, all of them, some of them don't know it. They're taught by some previous scholar, which they didn't know, but that scholar was first educated by Newton. He was the great scholar. He talked and wrote more about the Bible than he did about science. But here's something most people don't know. He translated the emerald tablet. And he thought that was so important. Why? Because he was a member of the mystery schools. And those in the mystery schools read these books. And actually, if you want to know the truth, Nikola Tesla said he came up with his free energy device. This did not just, he didn't make it up. He said he got it from the ancient Egyptian teachings. So that would be my 3 reasons. But those reasons might not seem sufficient for some of you. Say, well, just because some guy named Newton believed in it, that's why you believe in it? Or just because some guy named Clement of Alexandria believed in it? Well, my point is that Clement of Alexandria lived almost 2,000 years ago. And he didn't just say he believed that it existed. He gave us information with a couple of other people that talk about it and said that it was widely believed by all of these alchemists and the esoteric believers, the Gnostics, which we now know is Christianity. And I don't have time to go in and prove that here today, but I've done that many, many times in many other videos. So we have testimony from the ancient ones. One of the reasons I believe in the Bible is because I have testimony from apostles and prophets and just learned men for hundreds of years after Christ died, people who were disciples of his disciples. And I don't know if you guys know, but there's an actual letter that we'll talk about one of these days that says they saw Jesus and they describe him. They say he might have been like 5'11" or something. He was very handsome and describes his complexion and the clothes he wore and everything. We have other letters written to Caesar describing Jesus and what he was doing. We know that Jesus existed. So that is testimony. But how I know Jesus is because I pray, I speak to Jesus. And Jesus promises that he will speak to anyone. You can have your own testimony of Jesus. So anyway, back to what we were saying. There are a lot of things out there in the world that people are hyping, saying this is going to happen, that's going to happen. And I'm saying that some of these things are hoaxes. Who would want to hoaxes? Who would have the ability? Nobody, except the elite, those who invent the propaganda. There are a group of Bavarians that have had the control of the whole schedule and the world politics and all the propaganda and all of the mesmerism that we've been privy to for the last 100 years. It's all been done by these Bavarians in this little cult. This is the most dangerous, wicked cult in the world. Now, you probably heard the story about the ancient country of Khazaria. They all converted to Judaism. Well, that is probably based on the truth. I mean, it's a story written by some guy. Well, he got it from somewhere. It's a certain narrative trying to explain a certain phenomenon. That there was a very powerful people that conquered the world back before we had satellites and money and banking. They became powerful just in the normal way that humans do. And they did so probably because they spread out and became unified, not by the bounds of a country. We don't even have a Khazarian country anymore. But they're bound by a belief. Now, they thought about becoming Islamic. They thought about becoming Christian. They thought about becoming other. But they decided to become Jews. And they all did it together. So this tells you that perhaps some of them actually pretend to be other religions. But for the most part, they have taken a covenant to the deity of Yahweh. And they have convinced everybody in the world that he is the true deity, when actually he is the devil. And they know that. And so you got the two covenants, the good one and the bad one. Yahweh's the deity of this world. He's beneath. He's a liar. He's a murderer. He's the deity of the old covenant, which is the covenant of death and curses. So they are looking forward to the reemergence of death. That's not so far-fetched, because death reemerges all the time. But for some, and for all eventually, we overcome death. and it no longer has any hold on us. See, the monsters go away, and we find out we're the Lord of the manor. So it doesn't have any effect on us. But you've heard in the Bible, you've heard people say that hell is eternal, and the worm doth not die, and the flames not quenched. Well, friends, that's a grand truth. The grand truth of the fact that pain and suffering will always exist. Hell will always exist. And Yahweh will always exist. The devil is the supreme ruler over this kingdom. And he makes laws, and by him kings are risen, and they are brought down. And Jesus said, no, thank you, I don't want your kingdom. We have to make a decision. Now, the book of Thoth in the Emerald Tablets talks about this in very strange ways, very similar to our New Testament, talking about the voice or the word in the halls of Amenti, which is the deity Ammon. Well, Amenti, that's the wife of Ammon. His wife was Amunet. But there's another deitress that they confuse because they think it's a different deitress. But that was Amentet, or Amenti. Amentet is the woman of the West. Well, west of what? West of the very center. Cairo is the exact center of the geographical continents. All the continents of the world, geographically, the center is Cairo, or the Great Pyramid. And so that's the wheel. The Gilgal is the peripheral, and west is west of the Nile. And that's Africa. So Africa is this beautiful African Ethiopia, the most beautiful woman that was ever known. She was from the underworld, not from heaven. Her father was Zeus, but she was from the underworld, and she was like a mermaid. She was a nymph. She was a Gentile. But she was the most beautiful woman. And the other guys over on the other side of the Nile, that was the male side. And she would always compare herself to the daughters of the Greeks who was on the other side. And so the Greeks, they married the Africans. And this is where you get Caesar and Cleopatra. This is where you get the Ptolemies and their relationship with Cleopatra, or the Queen of the Nile. But where is Amun? The moon is in the darkness, in the bottom of the wheel, in the abyssals. And so she is great mother Tiamat, or time and matter. And she is the moon because that is her power, her knowledge. What she understands is giving light to the darkness and educating us. She is the great huntress, the Artemis, the mother nature, basically the earth, the lower realm of earth, not in heaven. So in the Emerald Tablets, it speaks of the halls of Amenti. It's like a hall of mirrors. It's the great illusion. Yes, there was halls of Amenti that were literal, that are under the pyramid, under the Sphinx. And they do also call them in the Greek tongue the labyrinth. But that is only symbolic. Everything that the Egyptians did, like building the temples, they were on ley lines, and they followed the pattern in the stars. And so you have beneath the pyramid, you have a great pit. Then you have a king's chamber and a queen's chamber. And these represent different parts of the being of the whole, tunnels and the passageways. And beneath that, down in the pit, was the labyrinth, or the halls of Amenti. But it represented your being, your temple, the entire world temple, universal temple. And the halls of Amenti then are incarnations in the lower realm and the paths, illusions that we have created from all of the fears and monsters that we've created. And the pull and the draw and the lure of lust and desire, takes us stage by stage through the advancement and the transmigration. And every step of the way, it is revealing the andros without law, or the man of sin. And that also has something to do with Jesus and Thoth and Hermes, because as Thoth says in the book, he has lived for millions and trillions of years, forever. And he's always transforming, and he has conquered death, and he has the key to life and to death. So, yes, all scripture is inspired of deity, and beneficial for teaching and reproving and setting matters straight. But remember, we have 10 lost tribes, and they are scattered in all the world, and the restoration of all things spoken of by the mouth of all the holy prophets will arrive. And then the stick of Judah, the Bible, and the stick of Ephraim, which is a multitude, the other lost 10 tribes, the Gentiles, when they are restored, they'll bring with them their heritage, their knowledge. The restoration means their knowledge. And their religion that they worship at Beth El, or the house of El, which is the restoration of all of their knowledge and their deities, the pleroma of whom Jesus was filled. And Jesus rejected the lower deity of the lower ego. But we have all of these things that people are saying are true, but are not true. And it's the elite, the wicked elite, that are propagating these lies. Why? Because they want you to think that everything's a lie. Because one by one, all of these lies will be proven to be lies. And you'll think everything's a lie. You see, pretty soon you won't believe that the JAB was a bad thing. They'll prove to everybody, and the world shall wonder why they were right all along. Look at all the people that died because they didn't get their JAB, right? Well, they died because they weren't allowed to buy and sell because they didn't get their JAB. And when people's lifespans end up being only 10 years, they'll say, oh, okay, well, that's normal because there's too many people. And yeah, we're all sterile now and everything, but it's for our own good. They will convince everybody. But right now is the important time. They're only trying to get the entire world through this day of judgment. So everything they've been doing the last 100 years or thousands of years has been leading up to this day, the day of the Lord. And they've been trying to deceive you. They had religion. They started going in with Jehovah's Witnesses and the liars and the false prophets, making you think that all Christians were false prophets, that all Christians were idiots and thought that when you died, that's it and there is no soul. Trying to confuse everybody, telling everybody, oh, the real deity is Yahweh, and you've got to spell it Jehow, or else you're not in the true faith. And keep all his holy days and keep the law. And they brought you back under the law. It's a great deception. Why? Well, because the truth was going to become evident. And they knew that. Everybody can see that 9/11 was a HOAX. But in order to get everyone to know something they ought to know, like everybody knows a boy's a boy and a girl's a girl, but to confuse you so bad, they will drill this impossible, ignorant idea. They'll drum it down your throat. They'll take decades if they have to convince you that it's a good thing to murder your babies. Did you know it's legal now for them to use baby parts in satanic rituals? Did you know that all of the social services and the foster care homes are run by satanic covens? The Satanists are one of the largest branches of this Bavarian cult. Jehovah's Witnesses is a major branch. They only use Scientology as some kind of an ACLU or something. They used to use Jehovah's Witnesses for that kind of thing, taking things to court. But Jehovah's Witnesses turned into be this giant experiment to see how badly they can deceive people and get them to disown their own children and get down on their knees and beg for years and sit at the back of the hall and beg for forgiveness to just see how far they could push people into some kind of an insanity. But everything is for a reason. If they're telling you that the earth is flat, it's only so that you won't believe in Jesus, because that'll be another one of his hoaxes that you'll probably think, oh, everything's a hoax. So if the earth is really flat and this round globe thing is a hoax, then maybe Jesus is a hoax. Maybe we shouldn't read the Emerald Tablets, because after all, our church says only the Bible is the truth. Well, a Latter-day Prophet said, a Bible, we've got a Bible, and we need no more Bible. And that would be an ignorant point of view, because it was illustrating how ignorant people are when they don't think about anything. They keep saying, we've got a Bible, and in the meantime, they don't even know what a Bible is. They don't know how it was mistranslated or what the original scriptures were. They were the Greek Septuagint. We've lost all that information. So that is why they come up with the craziest ideas and get everybody to believe it. Now, if you want to know how to tell the difference between something that is crazy and not true, propaganda, and something that is true, but the world thinks it's not, like the idea that we're about to go into the Great Tribulation. Well, we've been taught for so long that false prophets are bad. Jehovah's Witnesses made all these mistakes. They did it blatantly, right in your face. And now the world has lost faith in Christianity or the Bible. And if the Bible says the world's coming to an end, nobody's going to believe it. It tells you that in the Bible itself. They'll say, where is the coming of Jesus? He's not coming. For since our forefathers fell asleep in death, everything continues as it always has. So they've gotten us to this point. They've been the catalyst to take away the ignorant, the fools, the lazy, who will be mesmerized and just believe what people tell them. But you see, on the other hand, there are things that the world believes. I mean, most of the world believes that Jesus isn't coming. Most of them are atheists. But there's this conspiracy theory that says the Bible's true. Okay. Here's how we know. Evidence. You can go and test the scriptures. All the ancient mystery school believers used to believe in this until they became apostate in the last few hundred years with Kant and Nietzsche and Charles Russell, Freud and Darwin and Einstein, and these ignorant people who really knew nothing about any real subject. They don't know anything about astrology. They don't know what the stars are, what they're not. They're not going to go by the Sumerian tablets or the Bible to find out. They're not going to read the Emerald Tablets anymore. They've forgotten about them. Poor old Newton's over here reading the Emerald Tablets and all the Holy Scriptures. Right? Even Tesla was reading the Egyptian scriptures, the hieroglyphs. But now Einstein comes along and is completely fascinated with Madame Blavatsky's book, Isis Unveiled, and the Secret Doctrine, because he didn't know anything about it. I'm sure he was a member of the secret society, but remember, the secret societies today were taken over by the York up in Britain, the York Rite, and they invented all of there's no York Rite. The original rites only had 3 initiations. But because they wanted this secret society into the world and get everybody involved and under their control, they knew they wanted a whole bunch of individuals in the initiations where they were just learning lies until they could be trusted, until they could move up, and only their people would ever know the truth. In other words, get everybody, not just their secret members, into this secret cult. But they would be in the secret cult, and then they would open up like an umbrella for the rest of the world to enter into the mystery schools, but never give them the ability to get the highest knowledge or to hear the words that are unlawful to speak. And so all these peasants are going through Masonry and all the rites and the York rites. There's like 33 of them now. And when they're graduating, and in fact, even the colleges and schools are an extension of this. So you graduate with a black robe. Your priests have black robes because they've been infiltrated by the dark side, the deity of this world that turns everything upside down and says, I am deity and there is none else. And you get a black robe with a square hat, the hat of Saturn. Well, Saturn was the husband of Ops. Saturn, in your New Testament, is written Satan. Not really. That's the way they say it in English. But look at the Greek. It's Satanos, Saturn, or Sate, or Sato, Seti, Set. That last part is all syntax. The actual root of the word is Set. And Set was the brother of Osiris. And in the Greek, Osiris is Zeus. So Saturn is the Latin Kronos. And he's the devil. He's the earthly deity. And he's married to Ops. Ops means the fullness. Fullness means space, or the material. The counterpart is Artemis. And so Artemis was a hunter, and when you ate bread, which today we're told is wheat or some kind of barley, bread was the food of the hunter, and it's the carnal nature. In the Greek, the word for bread, it's in your New Testament that Jesus broke and gave to us. The word is artos, and it comes from Artemis. It's the food of the huntress, and it was meat. So we have the temple of Artemis, which is one of the greatest temples of all time. It wasn't evil. It was simply a place to learn the mysteries of this physical world, to understand the lower world, Mother Nature, and all of her laws. We're still not talking about the fallen physical or the lower ego who is full of lust. It says, I am vengeance. I am can be good. I am the resurrection. I am the life. That's the higher thinking. The lower ego, when it falls and it becomes a deceiver, then it makes apostles who are false apostles, according to the Apostle Paul. Well, he didn't say they weren't apostles. He said they were apostles, but they were lying apostles. So you've got apostles that tell the truth, and you've got apostles who lie. And no wonder, don't be amazed, because even Satan is changed from his natural, ugly, physical, material, lustful self, but he's over time changed into an angel of light. And so all these apostles, these lying apostles, are deceivers. Just like their grand teacher, the Antichrist. Again, people think Antichrist means the evil Christ. There's the good Christ and the evil Christ. You can't have an evil Christ. Christ is consciousness. But you can have the other Christ, because anti means other. So you've got the spiritual Christ and the lower consciousness. And this lower Antichrist, or the other Christ, or the outer Christ, because the true Christ is within, but the outer Christ is the one who is physical, and he's the man of sin. And that word there, sin, is not the word that we say means to miss the mark. That particular word is the Greek anomos, and it means he who is without law, like an anarchist. He doesn't believe in law, or he has no law. He's free. That is one verse that for some period of time I was a little stumped by. Because as you know, the Apostle Paul says we're not under any law. Any law. And so why is it that he's warning us about a man who's coming is going to ruin the world, who's not under any law? The lawless one. It doesn't mean he breaks the law, because if there is no law, you can't break it. No Christian can ever be a sinner, because his seed remaineth in us, and we have no sin because of our intent, because the Holy Spirit is with us. So our intention is always to do what's right. And we're kings. We're the lords of this. We're the heirs of this world. And therefore, we're not under law. We're not even like a child under the steward until the time comes when we're old enough to take over the whole manor. But we're literally under no law whatsoever. And so here's the man of sin coming, and he's the man of lawlessness. What could this mean? If you think about it, Jesus was, in one sense, lawless, meaning he had no law. He said, I and the Father are one. I can command mountains. They obey me. I am the lawgiver. They said, you've got to keep the Sabbath. He says, well, I'm the Lord of the Sabbath. See, I am not under the Sabbath. The Sabbath is under me. Look what 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 actually says here. Now let's walk through this. Let's try to understand this. The man of sin, which is the anomos, or the man of lawless, without law. Verse 1, now we beseech you, brethren, by the coming of our Lord Jesus Christ. That's what we want, is Jesus Christ. And remember, Jesus Christ said, I am one with the Father, and I can command the mountains. And you will do greater works than me, and ye are the divine being. Ye are deity. I am the Son of deity? He says, you say I am. I and the Father are one. But he said, I know the Father, and I know the Father is love. And I'm in harmony with that. But now, I don't want you to be soon shaken in mind, to be troubled neither by spirit, nor by word, nor by letters from us, that the day of Christ is at hand. Yeah, that's what Jehovah's Witnesses did. They wrote a letter and told everybody that Christ was coming. And that's not how we're going to know. Don't be worried about that. Those are liars. We're going to know by the Holy Spirit. And he says, by the way, let no man deceive you by any means, for that day shall not come, except there come a falling away first, and the man of sin be revealed, the son of perdition. Well, sometimes we read that, and I don't think we're understanding what's going on here. He's saying Christ, the coming, the enlightenment, the light, the brightness of his coming, that they're going to reject, just like on Mount Horeb, the light, the truth. And they took the deity of vengeance instead. But why did the Lord allow the deity of vengeance? Because it came by matter of course. If you reject truth and light, then you're being deceived by the lower self. And so the coming of the enlightenment cannot come until first we go to Mount Sinai. We get the enlightenment at Mount Horeb. We reject it. We receive the darkness. The man of sin is the one who's got to be revealed. You've got to find out who he is. And when you first can't handle the light, you turn to this deception and you begin to believe it. You're deceived by it. And then there's the revolt, which is a departure or the apostasy, because this lower self begins to exalt himself, and you begin to believe that this lower ego is the divine being. He's a liar, but you begin to believe in him. And he's luring you. He's lying. He's deceiving you. Well, wait a minute. That's a bad thing. Why would we want that? No, we have to be deceived. Because we get in bondage so deep that there comes a point when the whole revealing takes place, or the uncovering. But how does the uncovering, so that we know who this man of sin is, so that we know what the flesh is, how do we uncover it? Well, when this evil deception that we believed in gets to a point that he comes and exalts himself above the true deity, and he goes into the temple, which is your body, and you begin to worship him, and he sits down inside your consciousness, then whoever you are, you're displaying this deception in such a way that it's now become vile. It now causes ruin and destruction. And those who are awake and have oil in their lamps, they see the destruction. And they realize it's a good thing. It's taking down preconceived ideas and notions. It's a learning experience. The man, the andros, the human, and without law, which is what we ought to be because we're under grace. But without law, we're free to do all the wicked things that we want. But we find out quickly that it leads to consequences, and we learn and we decide for ourselves what is good and wrong. And we begin to be able to discern between good and evil spirits. And those who are enlightened realize that not all things are advantageous, and they follow the Spirit. But for those who follow after the flesh, it's only a lesson. Jesus said, I saw Satan fall like lightning. Wait a minute. Lightning falls? Well, maybe, but that's that same word light. A ray of light, a beam of light. He's not just a big bolt of light, right? The devil's a ray of light. It's an idea. And it falls down. It comes down from the sky. And what is that light? Well, that light is, I am God. And he sits inside the temple of God. And in his rage and in his vengeance, he destroys everybody. Well, as he's destroying everybody, he's waking people up. We're beginning to see the difference. He's being revealed or uncovered. So, you see, yes, evil is going to oppose and exalt itself above all that is good. Because we are free. We're under grace. And so, right now, the grace is restraining this evil from taking over and destroying everything. Because we have grace, we can make the right decisions and we learn. But when the world begins to worship, when there's a group of individuals that try to impose this worship of the physical vengeance, that will wake the majority of the world up. They will have their two prophets trying to convince everybody to worship the beast. And you'll have to comply. And it's hard. They'll make it easy for you to comply because you'll get goodies and you'll be accepted and you'll be allowed to live, all those crazy things. Well, there comes a point, a certain point of no return. If you take a group of individuals and you say, look, we're going to beat you if you don't get down on your knees. Well, people will get down on their knees because they don't want to get beaten. But then if you go over there and say, okay, I'm going to smack you right across the face really hard. If you don't, look at the tree and curse it. And so you look at the tree and you curse it because you don't want to get slapped. You'll keep going and doing and everything you're told, and they'll say, look, we're going to take away your food, or you got to do this. And you go, okay, then we don't want to take away our food. We'll do that. But at some point, they'll say, okay, now I'm going to kill you. Now, at that point, you'll fight back. Why? Because the man of sin has revealed himself, and you no longer are confused about who you are. And immediately you begin to realize that, yes, indeed, you are living. You have a right to life. You have a right to freedom. You have a right to being happy. And you will come in your wrath against the darkness, against the evil. The light, the brightness of his coming will be the enlightenment, where you'll finally, something will snap. And there will be people in the world that will say, no, enough is enough. This man of sin has been revealed. We understand it. This is the great judgment. And we're going to make the right decision and overcome the beast. So that's how it works. That's the mechanism here. We have an individual who, in his blindness, believes he is deity. And this will probably happen on the earth. They're following Kant and Nietzsche and atheists. And they believe in themselves, and they believe in their science, and they want you all to bow down. But because of their deception and their lying, these apostles, yes, they're apostles, they were sent by the devil, but they're lying apostles. And because of their lying, the physical flesh of man will be set free from the bondage and the curse of the law because of the man who was without law. Because the man who is without law, but still without the Holy Spirit or wisdom, will eventually become corrupt and evil if he does not seek the truth. He does not seek Christ. So that's the difference between the Antichrist and the Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ is the true consciousness. We have the freedom to do either one. We have the freedom to believe in stupidity and make mistakes. But if we don't overcome the lower ego, the liar, we have to be tempted by him in order to progress. We have to have mistakes. So the Lord has allowed us, all of mankind, to get to this point. And some of us to fall off into these cults and start believing in the son of perdition. But not knowing what this freedom we have is, we've turned it into a license to sin. And that will wake up the majority of mankind. And once we all become awakened, we will then see that this man of sin is the culprit. And all of our sins will be transferred onto the head of that which is the ego, the lower ego. We'll understand where it all belongs, where all the fault belongs, and we'll put it away from us. And it'll go into the lake of fire, which burns up the physical and takes the iron ore and burns it and melts it and takes the dross and purifies it, which is your soul, which is who you really are. Now, having said all that, I hope you understand that there are going to be lies out there to try and get you to believe that lots of things are true that aren't true, so that you'll just willy-nilly believe in things that are contradictory and stupid and lead you off the path. But that doesn't mean that there aren't things that the rest of the world doesn't know, and it is true. Things that you can show and prove. One of the things that's been going around, and I heard the guy over on Israeli news saying he had this map that the Navy drew up that shows the flooding of the United States or the world. And then most of the United States is going to be underwater and stuff. Now, you may have seen this map. I looked everywhere for that map. And I thought maybe I just wasn't able to find it. It's got to be out there somewhere. But I looked and looked, and finally I found this information. It took me a while. It says this image purports to be a leaked U.S. Navy map showing a plan to divide America up with an artificial quake at the New Madrid fault line. The map has been passed around Facebook with following descriptions. This is what the continent of the United States of America will look like once the New Madrid fault line is hit with a massive HARP frequency impulse. And see all this stuff about HARP and all that. Look, I'm sure they have these weapons. But they're not going to tell you about the real ones. They're just telling you about fake ones and getting you off on some, getting you to believe in aliens so that you would think that if Jesus comes, he's an alien or something. They just want to destroy the truth by making false lies that look and imitate the truth to get you away from the truth, if you understand what I'm saying. So, no, there is no map that shows that the United States is going to be underwater. I saw an experiment the other day where the guy had 2 glasses of water. One didn't have any ice in it, and he filled it all the way to the brim. The other one, he left some room, and he put ice cubes. And then they came back a couple hours later when the ice cubes melted. And it turns out that there was less water in the ones with the ice cubes. So when ice melts, it doesn't increase the volume of the water. When it melts, the volume of water becomes less. So of all of the glaciers and the icebergs in the North and South Pole, they all melted, the water would not rise, but it would sink. It would go lower. So that's probably another hoax that they've told us. And as far as we know, that might be a hoax too, except that I saw that demonstrated in an actual scientific experiment showing that it's the truth. So if you say, oh, it's just a big hoax, then I don't believe the Great Tribulation is going to happen. Friends, I want to tell you something. Things that are true can be demonstrated. The fact is, if you've come to believe and understand the Holy Scriptures, and you know that they are true, that they have prophesied many things, then you will know that what takes away that which is restraining is the fact that we're all believing in grace. But when this devil comes who wants to put you under law and rejects the sacrifice of Jesus, which gives us grace, and they began to bring back the law of Moses and put in your hand your forehead, the law of Moses, and they sacrifice the red heifer. That starts the Judean law. It comes up out of the bottomless pit, the beast, carnal nature, and they want everybody to worship the beast. That takes away their grace, all that partake, and therefore the wrath of that deity will come upon them. That is going to happen. And we know beyond a doubt that they're going to sacrifice the red heifer on March 29th. I can't remember, somewhere in there. I think it's the last day of March, 30th or something. And what's really interesting, and I don't know if you guys understand this, but on April the 8th, when that solar eclipse happens, that's also the new moon, which means it's the new year for the Judeans and their calendar. And this is what begins the 1,260 days. And it goes all the way to October the 15th, 3.5 years from now. And the new moon is going to be eclipsed or some phenomenon going on. But why do you think they've got the National Guard deployed in those states, Arkansas and Ohio and Texas and all up and through there, along that line where there's going to be this eclipse, total eclipse? We've seen eclipses before, if it's just a regular eclipse, but they're claiming there's going to be all these millions of cars coming to what? It's a line that goes all the way across the United States. It's not going to be in one town. That's ridiculous. It's not going to be like millions of people flooding into a town of 2,000 people. They'll be going along that line all the way up to Maine, all the way down through Texas. But look into it. You'll see that they've deployed nuclear bomb experts or chemical biologists or something. They're getting them all ready. The National Guard. They're making declarations, and before anything's ever happened, there is no disaster. They got to make a disaster declaration. A disaster? Why? Because hundreds of people are going to come to your town and go to your motel and eat your food? You mean you don't have enough water in the... What? Come on. The entire country is going to be able to see a lot of this. They're probably not going to drive out to Arkansas or Ohio, but maybe some will who are in that area. But you don't need nuclear technicians and scientists that deal with chemical spills and germ warfare and all stuff. You don't need these kinds of people deployed to someplace in Arkansas where they're just trying to get a gander at a total eclipse. Something's going down. It has nothing to do with the eclipse, but what's coming because of the eclipse, or at that particular time that ancient ones marked by that new moon. And they said, this is the day that we're going to do such and such. And so they've got this planned. We're going to go into the Great Tribulation. I think if the sun doesn't shine for the third part of it, it's got to be some kind of smoke coming up out of the bottomless pit, either nuclear, volcanic. I don't see a volcano, rumbling anywhere. But they're going to do something. That's why they got all these National Guard employed there. I would say get out of there that week. Get way away from there, please, friends, if you have any common sense. Get away from this total eclipse line going all the way from Texas to Maine. So this 1,260 days then would go to October the 15th. 3.5 years. And that's the festival of Sukkot. But Daniel says, happy is he that arrives at the end of the 1,335 days. That's 75 days more. If you count 75 days, you come out to Christmas, to the birth of Saturnalius, which would make a lot of sense. 2.5 months. And that puts you at the birth of Saturnalius. So that's probably the end of 1,335 days that Daniel's talking about. But we know beyond a shadow of a doubt, if they sacrifice the red heifer, they will do it on the day that the red heifer must be sacrificed, on the new moon of the first of the year. And then Passover comes 2 weeks later. So we don't actually start the 1,260 days from Passover. We actually start it from the new moon. Now, that's the day that they sacrificed the red heifer. And the reason why we know that's the beginning is because the red heifer, once it's sacrificed, it's burned, and they take the ashes and they're able to purify and cleanse the temple and the priests. And the Bible tells you in Revelation chapter 11 that when the temple is cleansed, then there will be 1,260 days. Now, they're doing it in some literal way on the earth, thinking that they're going to fulfill this literal letter of the law, which brings destruction. Remember, everything written by the apostles and the New Testament is written for us. And the apostles say that the letter bringeth death. What that means is that the whole world is going to go through an experience where many millions of people are going to die. Because they took the Bible literally and they worshiped the outer and not the inner. They didn't understand that he wants mercy and not sacrifice. Anyway, guys, we're over an hour by quite a bit. So I got to stop it there. And I'm going to go ahead and try and get this loaded. And hope you guys have a wonderful evening. May the Lord bless you. We'll see you here again tomorrow. Have a good one.